We have one of my best friends, and probably in the top 5 most honorable men. I'm seeing to see if he'll give me some, if he'll give me some cash, and I'll make him the #1 most honorable man I know. But David Barton is one of the most honorable men I know, and one of the best Christians I know. You're my hero. Thanks, you're my hero.
In, like, let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia Law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside,
David Barton, in case you don't know for some reason, David is the founder and president of wallbuilders.com, and I ask you to put your money where your heart is. Wallbuilders.com does more good than a pack of charities combined. All right, so David, go ahead. Come on.
Let's take this thing, because what's happening now, and you covered the Muslim Brotherhood. What's happening, it's a historic organization that goes back a long time, and they're really trying to get a foothold in America and make us think that they're mainstream and normal.
In, like, let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia Law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside, Boykin was just on it, and he's the guy who ran Delta and everything. He says so far, in just the last few years, we have 27 judges who have used Sharia law in 23 states for court decisions. So Sharia law is already in fact. So people in Oklahoma vote and they say, we don't want Sharia law, and of course that gets taken to court and the judge says, yeah, you can't have an amendment that says you don't want Sharia law. So this thing is really creeping in.
So you would allow, in, like, let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside, for somebody quote from a great quote here from Ellison. Let me show you this quote we got.
There he is.
See, there's there, and see his hand on it, and so you see a close-up of it.
Look at Nancy Pelosi right after plastic surgery.
Here's what he says. The Quran is definitely an important historical document in our national history, and it demonstrates that Jefferson was a broad visionary thinker. It would have been something that contributed, the Quran would have been something that contributed to his own thinking.
You know what? I agree with that. I say we take that from Keith Ellison. I agree with every word of that.
I do too. I do. I totally agree, just not the way he meant it.
Yeah,
it's totally opposite of what he meant.
Let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside, what we're doing right now at the military is really America's second war on terror. The first war on terror we had lasted 32 years, went through 4 different presidencies and the Continental Congress.
Like, let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside, and at the end of 2 years, they signed the peace treaty, and after 32 years of having the conflict with these guys, we finally reached a period of somewhat peace. But their position was, we always, and this is General William Eaton, who led the first expedition under Jefferson, had been a diplomat before, and he said the problem is they consider Americans a weak sect of Christians because we won't fight. And since we won't fight, they're willing to come after us. And so that's why Jefferson said, I'm willing to fight, and that's where things turned around. After we showed a willingness to fight, they left us alone.
Do you feel like the majority in a locality should be able to determine?
Yes. And here in New York City, there's schools that are 100% Hasidic Jewish, and I think that they ought to be able to have Hasidic Jewish practices there because all 100% kids are.
So you would allow, in, like, let's say Dearborn, Michigan was majority Muslim.
And it is.
You'd be all right with Sharia law and the whole business.
Sure. But for somebody from the outside, to come in and say, I don't like that, you can't do it, that's what I got trouble with.
Really? See, that strikes me as the essence of America, is that somebody from the outside of the federal government saying, you can't do that.
You can't do it.
Yeah, because it creates a barrier to people and freedom. It creates a barrier for people going into those areas, and it'd be like saying, and you can't restrict basis on race. By establishing a religious doctrine in an area, that is setting up an exclusionary boundary and a coercion to new people coming into that area. And I think actually the opposite of probably what you think.
If it's coercion.
Coercion is the practice of forcing another party to behave in an involuntary manner by use of threats or intimidation or some other form of pressure or force. This would include lying, as David Barton and Glenn Beck clearly do for their new Christian nation that we as a people in our history already lived through and are now just breaking free of. In our Founding Fathers' day, the Christians used coercion all the time on many different levels. Lying, like these kinds of Christians do, is just one example of the moral mischief these kinds of people do that mirror our Christian heritage. This isn't saying that all Christians were bad, but it is saying that a lot were morally mischievous. Just study slavery in our country and the religion of those involved, and you'll find that most, if not all, were Trinitarian Christians. In fact, I ask if anyone can give me an example of someone, some organization other than the Trinitarian type Christian who promoted or advocated slavery.
Do you think people would be more comfortable with you if they felt like you were consistently looking to extend historical context and not, because there are a lot of critics out there who say you cherry pick your religious facts, take them out of context, your historical facts, to use them to bolster your argument.
They've never proven that. They claim that. Show me some documentation where it's taken out of context, and they've never provided that. They complain about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Barton.